The story of civilization we all learned in school seems pretty straightforward, right? First, we learned to farm. Then, we built villages. Those villages grew into cities, and from there, it was a straight shot to complex society, government, art, and religion. For decades, this was the accepted linear story of humanity. But what if that entire timeline is wrong? What if, deep in the shadows of prehistory, thousands of years before anyone planted a seed, a lost civilization did the impossible? They gathered, organized, and built a temple of stunning sophistication, a monument that predates Stonehenge by over 6,000 years. And then, after centuries of use, they deliberately buried their entire world and simply vanished. This is the story of Göbekli Tepe, the people who weren't supposed to exist, and the profound mystery of why they chose to disappear. Our story begins not with a king or an empire, but on a dusty, rounded hilltop in southeastern Turkey. For generations, local shepherds knew this place as Göbekli Tepe, or Potbelly Hill. They saw it as little more than a strange, lonely mound dotted with carved limestone, believing the hill was sacred, but they had no idea what was sleeping just inches beneath the soil. It wasn't until 1994 that a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt, acting on a brief mention in an old survey, decided to take a closer look. He recognized flint shards on the surface not as natural rocks, but as the tools of Stone Age people. When he started digging, he uncovered the top of a massive T-shaped pillar, exquisitely carved and unmistakably man-made. In that moment, the entire story of human history began to fracture. What Schmidt's team unearthed was not a village, but a sprawling complex of monumental stone circles. Radiocarbon dating placed its construction at an astonishing 9600 BCE. To put that in perspective, this was a time before pottery, before writing, before the wheel. The Great Pyramid of Giza was still 7,000 years in the future. This was the Stone Age, a period we associate with small, nomadic bands of hunter-gatherers. And yet, here was proof of something else entirely. Here was evidence of a coordinated effort, of shared belief, and an artistic vision on a scale that should have been impossible. The site, often called the 0 point of history, immediately posed a revolutionary question. If hunter-gatherers built this, what else did we have wrong about our past? It challenged the core assumption that complex society was a consequence of agriculture. Göbekli Tepe suggested the opposite. Perhaps it was the need to gather, to worship, and to build something monumental together that actually drove humanity towards civilization. The temple came first, everything else followed. Walking through Göbekli Tepe is like stepping into another world, one governed by forgotten symbols and ancient, silent gods. The site is made up of at least 20 enclosures, though only a fraction have been excavated. The largest are huge circular structures, some reaching 20 meters across. At their heart are two colossal T-shaped pillars, towering up to 5.5 meters tall and weighing as much as 20 tons. These are surrounded by smaller, inward-facing pillars connected by stone walls. But these aren't just crude blocks. They're masterpieces of prehistoric art. The T-shaped pillars are stylized human figures. We know this because many have arms carved along their sides, with hands pointing toward loincloths etched at their fronts. Their T-shaped tops are thought to be abstract heads, left deliberately blank, creating an eerie, anonymous presence. Were they revered ancestors, or the first gods ever given form? The pillar surfaces teem with life, a Stone Age menagerie carved with reliefs of foxes, boars, spiders, scorpions, and graceful cranes. Vultures feature prominently, perhaps linked to funeral rites, as some cultures believe they carried the souls of the dead into the afterlife. This isn't just random decoration. It's a complex symbolic language we're only just beginning to understand. Some researchers think it tells a story, a mythology carved in stone. The skill required is mind-boggling. The pillars were quarried from the surrounding limestone bedrock, sometimes hundreds of meters away, using nothing but flint tools. They were then shaped, carved, and hauled to the summit before being lifted into place. Archaeologists estimate that a single enclosure required the coordinated labor of hundreds of people from multiple clans, a level of social organization unheard of for hunter-gatherers. They would gather for massive ritual feasts. Tens of thousands of butchered animal bones, mostly wild gazelle, have been found on site. And the discoveries keep coming. Ground-penetrating radar shows that over 90% of Göbekli Tepe is still buried. In 2023, archaeologists unearthed a stunningly realistic human statue and a painted boar, adding another layer to the artistic traditions of these people. Other research suggests the complex was built on a sophisticated geometric plan, with three main enclosures forming a near-perfect equilateral triangle. The builders may have even been keen astronomers. One theory proposes that carvings on the vulture stone pillar represent constellations and record a cataclysmic impact that occurred around the end of the last ice age. So, who were they? Who were the architects of this Stone Age cathedral? For a long time, the leading theory, championed by Klaus Schmidt, was that Göbekli Tepe was a ritual center built by nomadic hunter-gatherers who traveled to the site before dispersing again. There was little evidence of permanent settlement, no houses or daily trash pits. This was revolutionary in itself, proving that nomads could achieve incredible feats of engineering and cooperation. But the picture is becoming more complex. More recent discoveries are challenging the idea that the site was purely ceremonial. Archaeologists are uncovering evidence of year-round occupation and tools for daily life, suggesting people lived there at least part of the year to construct the monuments and perform rituals. This society seems to have been in transition, on the very cusp of the agricultural revolution. They were hunter-gatherers, starting to experiment with the wild grains that grew abundantly in this region of the Fertile Crescent. Instead of agriculture leading to complex society, Göbekli Tepe may have been the engine that drove the change. The immense logistical challenge of feeding hundreds of workers for construction and rituals may have been the very thing that spurred the intensive cultivation, and eventually, domestication of wheat. The temple created the need for the farm. This society was far from simple. Building these enclosures implies a social hierarchy. There must have been leaders, perhaps powerful shamans or clan elders, who could command labor and manage resources, likely holding power through control over sacred knowledge. Evidence of a so-called skull cult has even emerged, with fragments of human skulls found intentionally carved and modified after death, suggesting complex beliefs about ancestors and the spirit world. The art provides another clue. The animals depicted are almost all wild and dangerous: snakes, boars, and predators. This is a stark contrast to later Neolithic art, which often featured domesticated animals and symbols of fertility. Some scholars believe Göbekli Tepe represents the last great stand of the hunter-gatherer worldview. It may have been an attempt to capture the power and spirit of the animal world they had depended on for millennia, a world that was just beginning to vanish. The story of Göbekli Tepe is a powerful reminder that our past is not a closed book. With every excavation, new discoveries force us to rethink what we know about the dawn of civilization. If this journey into a 12,000-year-old mystery has captured your imagination, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. We're always exploring the edges of the known world, and you won't want to miss where we go next. Perhaps the deepest mystery of Göbekli Tepe isn't how it was built, but how it ended. Around 8000 BCE, after more than 1500 years of use, the people who had poured generations of effort into this site did something utterly inexplicable. They buried it. This was no simple abandonment. The enclosures were intentionally and meticulously filled in. The fill consisted of millions of limestone fragments, stone tools, and animal bones, all brought to the hilltop and packed into the structures until they were completely submerged. This act of burial is what preserved Göbekli Tepe so perfectly for millennia, creating a time capsule of the Stone Age. But why? Why would a society bury its own crowning achievement? For a long time, the consensus was a deliberate ritual burial. Perhaps a sacred site that had lost its power needed to be ritually closed or desanctified. Another theory is that a new religion emerged, and the monuments of the old faith had to be hidden. Or maybe it was a final poignant act of preservation, burying the temple to protect it. However, even this long-standing theory is now being debated. More recent analysis, led by the site's current excavation director, Lee Clare, suggests the process was more complicated. He proposes the burial may have begun with natural landslides on the unstable slope. The builders may have constructed retaining walls, but were fighting a losing battle. The final burial, then, might have been a controlled, ritualized closure of a site that could no longer be maintained. Yet this doesn't fully erase the element of intent. Evidence from similar nearby sites shows that intentional burial was a common practice in this culture. Whether it was a purely ritual act or a response to environmental pressures, the decision to entomb Göbekli Tepe was a deliberate choice to mark the end of an era. For reasons we may never fully know, the people who defined themselves by this sacred hill chose to walk away and let it sleep. After burying their world, the people of Göbekli Tepe seemed to fade into the next chapter of human history. They didn't disappear in a cataclysm. Rather, they became the ancestors of the first farmers, the pioneers of the Neolithic Revolution, and they may have helped start it. They traded their sacred hill for settled villages, their hunter's spear for a farmer's sickle. Their monumental, centralized religion seems to have dissolved, replaced by more local, domestic beliefs. Göbekli Tepe is more than just the world's oldest temple. It's a ghost from a forgotten age, a testament to a time when human ingenuity was far more advanced than we ever believed possible. It proves that the path to civilization wasn't a straight line, but a complex, winding road filled with revolutionary ideas and false starts. Only a tiny fraction of the site has been uncovered. Beneath the soil, more stone circles and countless artifacts await, holding the answers to the questions that still haunt us. Who were these people really? What stories are told in their silent stone language? And what was the ultimate reason for their great vanishing act? Göbekli Tepe stands as a monument to the vastness of our own history and the humbling reality that entire chapters of our story are still waiting to be read. It reminds us that 12,000 years ago, on a lonely hilltop, a lost civilization chose to bury its world, leaving us with a mystery that challenges everything we think we know about where we come from.